Please take note of the following disclaimer. This is a free webinar and no attendee has paid or will be asked to pay to join this session. The webinar will be hosted by Upskill Academy in conjunction with the Road Traffic Infringement Agency, also known as the RTIA. This forms part of the AARTO national rollout program of the RTIA to create awareness. Welcome to the AARTO and the Demerit system What's Next webinar. While we wait for all the attendees to join, let us cover the housekeeping rules for this webinar. Today's webinar is scheduled to last 3 hours, including the question and answer section. All participants will be muted to enable the speakers to present without interruption. Questions submitted prior to an hour before the start of the webinar will be answered first during the question and answer section. Any additional questions can be submitted via the chat room during the webinar at any time. These will be answered if there is enough time after the pre-submitted questions. There will be a short 15-minute interval at 12:30. Please do not log out or leave the session during the interval period. The recording of this presentation will be provided approximately 72 hours after we conclude. The recording will only be available for a limited period. Welcome to the AARTO and the Demerit system What's Next webinar. While we wait for all the attendees to join, let us cover the housekeeping rules for this webinar. Today's webinar is scheduled to last 3 hours, including the question and answer section. All participants will be muted to enable the speakers to present without interruption. Questions submitted prior to an hour before the start of the webinar will be answered first during the question and answer section. Any additional questions can be submitted via the chat room during the webinar at any time. These will be answered if there is enough time after the pre-submitted questions. There will be a short 15-minute interval at 12:30. Please do not log out or leave the session during the interval period. The recording of this presentation will be provided approximately 72 hours after we conclude. The recording will only be available for a limited period. Welcome to the AARTO and the Demerit system What's Next webinar. While we wait for all the attendees to join, let us cover the housekeeping rules for this webinar. Today's webinar is scheduled to last 3 hours, including the question and answer section. All participants will be muted to enable the speakers to present without interruption. Questions submitted prior to an hour before the start of the webinar will be answered first during the question and answer section. Any additional questions can be submitted via the chat room during the webinar at any time. These will be answered if there is enough time after the pre-submitted questions. There will be a short 15-minute interval at 12:30. Please do not log out or leave the session during the interval period. The recording of this presentation will be provided approximately 72 hours after we conclude. The recording will only be available for a limited period. Welcome to the AARTO and the Demerit system What's Next webinar. While we wait for all the attendees to join, let us cover the housekeeping rules for this webinar. Today's webinar is scheduled to last 3 hours, including the question and answer section. All participants will be muted to enable the speakers to present without interruption. Questions submitted prior to an hour before the start of the webinar will be answered first during the question and answer section. Any additional questions can be submitted via the chat room during the webinar at any time. These will be answered if there is enough time after the pre-submitted questions. There will be a short 15-minute interval at 12:30. Please do not log out or leave the session during the interval period. The recording of this presentation will be provided approximately 72 hours after we conclude. The recording will only be available for a limited period. Welcome to the AARTO and the Demerit system What's Next webinar. While we wait for all the attendees to join, let us cover the housekeeping rules for this webinar. Today's webinar is scheduled to last 3 hours, including the question and answer section. All participants will be muted to enable the speakers to present without interruption. Questions submitted prior to an hour before the start of the webinar will be answered first during the question and answer section. Any additional questions can be submitted via the chat room during the webinar at any time. These will be answered if there is enough time after the pre-submitted questions. There will be a short 15-minute interval at 12:30. Please do not log out or leave the session during the interval period. The recording of this presentation will be provided approximately 72 hours after we conclude. The recording will only be available for a limited period. Please take note of the following disclaimer. This is a free webinar and no attendee has paid or will be asked to pay to join this session. The webinar will be hosted by Upskill Academy in conjunction with the Road Traffic Infringement Agency, also known as the RTIA. This forms part of the AARTO National Rollout Program of the RTIA to create awareness. Hello everyone and welcome to the AARTO and the Demerit Point System webinar. Your host for this webinar is Liesl Erasmus, and she is the Creative and Content Director of Upskill Academy. We want to thank our guest speakers from the Road Traffic Infringement Agency for joining us today. We are all looking forward to their presentations and the information they will be sharing with us. Before I hand it over to Liesl, to introduce the panel, we would like to take a short moment of your time to introduce you to Upskill Academy. Upskill Academy is the creators of simplified courses for sometimes complicated yet current, relevant, and mostly required learning for compliance with various laws. The aim is to quickly, easily, and affordably upskill your workforce with the relevant information required for compliance with regulatory matters that may have far-reaching and negative effects on your business. The internet is your classroom. Study anytime, anywhere on any smart device. Train, verify, certify in 3 easy steps. Our training is a perfect solution with minimal disturbance yet maximum impact. Our courses are quick to complete, packed with all the needed information with graded questionnaires and a certificate of completion as proof of training and compliance. Companies are fully embracing e-learning and online learning platforms due to their simplicity of use. We offer the ability to monitor student performance and progress and offer completion of compliance certificates. Cost-effectively mitigate risk for your company. So, how does it work? Courses can be purchased separately or for as little as 100 Rand per month per employee. You can gain access to a constantly growing library of courses for all your employees. This means that your employees will be able to continuously learn various topics. Some of these topics include cybersecurity awareness training, AARTO driver training in ethics, fraud, bribery and managing the risk training, and so much more. The best part, the library constantly grows. Need a course that is not available in our library? No problem, we will research and develop it for you and add it to our library for all our subscribers. If the course you need is company specific, we can still research and develop it for you at a negotiated fee. The first step is to choose whether you want to purchase just the one course or subscribe to our library, which provides access without limits. Step 2 is to log into your profile and get started. All courses consist of modules with videos followed by short questionnaires. The system automatically saves your progress so you can do the course over time. The system also has course compliance controls that require video completion to move on from one module to another. As soon as you've completed all the modules and passed the graded questionnaires, you will receive a certificate of completion. Train, verify, certify in 3 easy steps. Our clients say it best. Here are just a few testimonials. Now that you know who we are, let's take a quick look at the courses we offer relating to today's topic. So why did we decide to develop courses in AARTO? It was a no-brainer. Altogether, our team has a total of 13 years of experience in traffic fine management. With this knowledge and the knowledge our team has in understanding the AARTO Act and how it will positively affect the management of traffic fines nationally for companies, we decided to develop 2 e-learning courses. AARTO and the new Demerit point system is not all doom and gloom. Yes, if you do not update your policies, train your administration staff and drivers and implement the correct procedures and point monitoring systems, then AARTO will affect you negatively. You are probably thinking what can be positive about AARTO? Let us look at a few positives. You will be able to access your traffic fine nationally on one system. No more contacting various municipalities or going to various traffic departments to obtain a list of fines. You automatically qualify for a 50% discount, so no more applying for discounts on behalf of a driver. Another positive is that you will be able to submit your elective options electronically, so less paperwork and no more standing in queues at courts. And the biggest positive is that your drivers will be more responsible, if you upskill them effectively, in what the consequences will be for non-compliance. One of the questions most asked by some of the registrants for this webinar is, what are the risks for our company if we do not comply with AARTO? We are quickly going to look at some of the potential risks for your proxy, drivers, vehicles, and your insurance when it comes to AARTO and the Demerit point system. Let us start by looking at the risk to the company's proxy. The good news is that there is no risk to your proxy. Points will be allocated to the vehicles and drivers of the vehicles. The proxy, therefore, will no longer have to worry about warrants issued in his name for company traffic fines. So, what are the risks to your drivers? If you implement AARTO correctly within your company and upskill your traffic fine administrators, then all fines will be nominated to the responsible driver and demerit points allocated to the driver's license. Ultimately, your drivers can get their licenses suspended or cancelled after a third suspension. This in turn will mean a loss of job and loss of income. The other risk to the company when it comes to drivers is that if you do not have your policies and procedures in place and you did not upskill your driver, you might not be able to take any steps against the driver. Internal memos and notices around the office might not be seen as sufficient training. A trained driver will most definitely be more careful and will be more likely to adhere to the road traffic laws of South Africa. Did you know that the vehicles in your fleet can also receive demerit points? Your vehicles can therefore also receive a suspended license and cancelled license after a third suspension. This means that you will have to implement a system to monitor the points of your vehicles. You will also need to upskill anyone responsible for ensuring that your vehicles are licensed and roadworthy. If your fleet cannot operate at full capacity, it will affect your revenue, delivery of service to your clients, and this will negatively affect your brand. Lastly, we are going to look at the risk to your insurance. If your company does not implement an AARTO policy and procedure and a system to monitor demerits, you might not be aware that a driver is using a vehicle with a suspended or cancelled license. Now, if that driver has an accident with a suspended or cancelled license, your insurance company will not pay out the claim. You will also not be able to hold the driver responsible for any damages if the driver was not provided sufficient training in AARTO and the consequences of non-compliance. Upskill Academy offers 2 e-learning courses. The first course, Understanding AARTO, is for HR, managers, and administrators. The course contains 6 modules and covers the whole act from when points are allocated, when drivers' licenses are suspended, to demerit points, how to make AARTO a core business focus, and the consequences of non-compliance. The second Understanding AARTO driver training course was specifically designed as a tool for companies to upskill their drivers. This course contains 6 modules covering everything from the demerit point system, consequences of demerit points, how to use the online system, and more. The newest module of this course covers what your company's AARTO policy and procedure might look like and ensures the driver understands the consequences of not complying. Our training is a perfect solution with minimal disturbance yet maximum impact. Both courses are quick to complete, packed with all the needed information with graded questionnaires and a certificate of completion as proof of training and compliance. The courses are also available in 3 languages: English, Xhosa, and Zulu. If you are interested in any of our AARTO courses, please feel free to contact us after the webinar. Please take note of the following disclaimer. This is a free webinar and no attendee has paid or will be asked to pay to join this session. The webinar will be hosted by Upskill Academy in conjunction with the Road Traffic Infringement Agency. This forms part of the AARTO national rollout program of the RTIA to create awareness.
Hi, good day everybody, and welcome to the Understanding AARTO webinar. I would like to welcome all the speakers that are joining us today from the RTIA, and I want to thank you all for making time out of your busy schedules with the implementation of AARTO to join us today for this session. I know a lot of people are looking forward to the updates and the information that you are going to share with us. I also want to encourage all our participants that have joined us to follow the RTIA on their social media pages so that you can see all the roadshows and everything that they are busy doing at the moment with the implementation of AARTO across South Africa. Our first speaker today is Advocate Moletsane from the RTIA. And she is going to speak to us about the High Court judgment, as well as the implications thereof. Advocate Moletsane, if you can just unmute yourself.
Morning, how are you, colleagues?
We're doing fine, thank you.
Fine, thanks. I'm not sure, should I then share the screen so that I can reflect the presentation?
Yes, you can do that.
Is it showing on everyone's screen?
Yes, we can see it. If you can maybe just make it on a slideshow on a bigger screen so it's a bit more visible.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yes. Thank you once more. Actually, my presentation is just brief, colleagues. It's not going to be long. It's just 2 slides, which of course deal with the judgment itself, and also on the other slide, I deal with the implications of that judgment. Colleagues, we were taken to court in 2020 by Alta, which we already know that it's an organization and doing tax abuse. So essentially, it challenged the constitutional validity of the AARTO Act, and as well as its Amendment Act, which was then assented to in 2019. So what it then alleged in the main was that the AARTO Act and as well as the Amendment Act, they do sort of create a single national system of road traffic regulation, and therefore unlawfully usurp the powers bestowed upon the legislatures in relation to the functional areas set out in Schedule 5. That will be Part A and Part B of that Schedule 5. So Part A will deal with functional areas of provinces, whereas Part B will deal with functional areas of municipalities. So AARTO then alleged that Parliament, in enacting those pieces of legislations, it superseded its powers by legislating on functional areas, which are exclusively granted to provinces as well as municipalities. In the alternative, in their papers, they then allege that if the court doesn't agree with them on that first issue, they will then challenge Section 17 of the Amendment Act. As we may be aware, Section 17 of the Amendment Act introduces further methods of service, which includes electronic service. So they alleged that that method of service that is being introduced in terms of the Amendment Act is unconstitutional, and therefore it is inadequate to permit service of documents. So that was their challenge in the alternative. In October, then that is when the matter was heard in court by the High Court in Pretoria, and the judgment in that matter was then handed down in January this year. Actually last year on the 13th January. So what then court said, in fact, it's 2022, colleagues, not 2021. So what the court then said was to agree with Alta and said, indeed, Parliament superseded its powers. It ought not to have enacted AARTO in the way that it did, because AARTO then deals with matters which are set out under Schedule 5, Part A and Part B thereof, as I did indicate that Part B deals with functional competencies of municipalities, and Part A thereof deals with functional areas of provinces. The court then indicated that AARTO seems to deal with matters relating to provincial roads and traffic, and it also purports to deal with traffic and parking. Those are functional areas outlined in Schedule 5 to be dealt with by provinces or to be legislated by provinces and municipalities. And unfortunately, that was the ruling by the court, and it then ruled that the AARTO Act and its Amendment Act were then invalid and therefore unconstitutional. So if I were to deal with the implications of that judgment, colleagues, as or subsequent to having been handed down, well, in terms of Section 172 of the Constitution, 172A, it then provides that the High Court, as well as courts of appeal, which are lower than the Constitutional Court in judicial stature, they can make an order of constitutional invalidity relating to any piece of legislation. However, what the Constitution then provides further is that such an order can never be of force and effect until such time that the Constitutional Court has confirmed it. And well, that provision in Section 172(2)A has been given effect to by the Superior Courts Act, particularly in Section 15(1)B, which also allows for a person or any person with interest in the matter to then lodge an appeal on the decision of the High Court relating to the constitutional invalidity. That appeal can be lodged or should be lodged to the Constitutional Court. And also, any other person of interest can also then lodge an application to confirm that order of the High Court to the Constitutional Court. So that is in terms of Section 15(1)B of the Superior Court, as well as Rule 16(4) of the Constitutional Court rules. Colleagues, the Department of Transport, as well as the Road Traffic Infringement Agency, and the Road Traffic Management Corporation, which is fondly known as RTMC, they have all lodged their notices of appeal in terms of those provisions that I've just read above. They have lodged those appeals to challenge that decision by the High Court. And those notices have been filed and lodged at the Constitutional Court. And of course, in terms of the rules of the Constitutional Court, subsequent to having lodged those notices, Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court should then issue directions in terms of how those applications should be dealt with. And to this date, those directions have not been issued, and we are awaiting the Constitutional Court to indicate how those applications should be dealt with. However, at the moment, colleagues, in terms of that provision in the Constitution, 172(2)(a), the AARTO operations are still applicable despite that High Court ruling. And we would await the directive from the Constitutional Court and later its decision on the appeal, as well as the confirmation of that ruling, colleagues. So that will be all on the presentation of the High Court matter, as well as the implications thereof. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Advocate Moletsane. Thank you for that information. We are going to have a Q&A section at the end of the session. So if any of the attendees do have any questions, you are more than welcome to add those questions in the chat section, and we will answer them at the end of the session. Before we proceed to the next speaker, I would like to just inform you and say welcome to the Deputy Register of the Traffic Infringement Management, Mr. Gert van Eden. He's also joining us today. And then also Mr. Henty Hubert, who's the manager in the Traffic Infringement section. So thank you so much for also joining us today. Our next speaker is Miss Venda Mamabolo, and she is going to speak about all the AARTO procedures. Miss Venda?
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Let me share my screen. Good morning. So I'm just quickly going to take you through the actual process. But yeah, this will then be the table of contents on my presentation. And firstly, I want to take you through what is AARTO, and then what the legislation is all about, and what is RTIA. So AARTO is Administrative Adjudication of Road Traffic Offences. It's Act number 46 of 1998. So as Advocate has indicated, it's an Act of Parliament. And Section 3 of this Act establishes this agency called the Road Traffic Infringement Agency. Our shareholder is the Minister of Transport, of course, and we are listed as a Schedule 3A public entity under the Public Finance Management Act. So the agency is mandated to oversee the implementation of AARTO countrywide. Currently, this act is proclaimed within the jurisdictions of Tshwane and Johannesburg, and is enforced by Johannesburg Metropolis, Tshwane Metropolis, Gauteng Traffic Police, and RTMC National Traffic Police when they are operating within those two jurisdictions. So furthermore, the Act, I've already indicated that the Act establishes the agency under Section 3. The Act also establishes an administrative adjudication procedure for road traffic contraventions. So what this means is that we decriminalizing road traffic contraventions, and we are dealing with them administratively. And then thirdly, the Act also establishes a point demerit system, but Mr. Ngcobo will take us through the presentation on the point demerit system. Our vision is to have a safe road user community And our mission is to encourage compliance with road traffic laws throughout the country through procedurally fair, reasonable, and a lawful administrative process. So when I explain also, you will just see how the administrative process is unfolding. So why do we want to implement AARTO? I think I must appreciate your intro on AARTO, and I felt like, no, there's no need for me to even proceed with this presentation. But yeah, as you've indicated earlier, different issuing authorities are using different contravention systems, and they then don't have a central system, but AARTO is going to bring a central system which we call the National Contravention Register. So as you earlier said, the system will make it easy if a person contravenes, maybe you're on holiday in Durban or in Cape Town and you happen to get a traffic fine. The system makes it easy for you when you return to your home to go to the nearest issuing authority to go and deal with your infringement or your fine that you would have received. And also the system also wants to simplify this issue of traffic fines. As I've indicated, we're going to deal with them administratively. So we also, there's a trend that the courts are not actually addressing traffic contraventions, despite the high number of accidents and the fatalities that we experience every year. So this also will assist the courts actually to focus on other matters that are before them, because the bulk of the traffic contraventions will then be dealt with administratively. And there's also people that we can call habitual offenders. And the current challenge is that a habitual offender can just act in impunity and not take responsibility for their action. For instance, if I'm a millionaire and I have fast cars and keep incurring traffic infringements, I can easily just go and pay, and my attitude towards road safety will not change. And there's also a possible wasteful or fruitless expenditure by issuing authorities in issuing the Section 56 because there's a little or non-payment of those fines, or actually response to the fines that have been issued. So some of the reasons that AARTO seeks to achieve is to encourage voluntary compliance to road traffic laws, simplify adjudication of road traffic contraventions. As I've indicated, they're going to deal with road traffic contraventions administratively rather than dealing with them under the criminal procedure process. And also, we seek to establish a procedure for effective and expeditious adjudication of road traffic infringements. You will see when I take you through the process that an AARTO notice after 96 days, it has reached its peak, and then you will actually need to resolve it, unlike waiting for a court case that is going to drag for a number of years. And also, AARTO seeks to encourage payment of penalties. Also, I'm going to take you through the discounted period and so on and so forth. So a lot of people would want to rather take advantage of that discounted period rather than go and negotiate with somebody, because with AARTO, it's automatic that you receive the discounted amount. And as I've indicated, the purpose is also to alleviate the burdens from the court so that the courts can focus on more serious cases like your criminal offenses. So these are the documents that are used under AARTO. I'm just going to take you through before I take you through the actual process. So We've got an AARTO 1. An AARTO 1 is a notice that is issued on the side of the road. They stop you and they inform you of your contravention and they issue that citation on the side of the road. And then we then also have an AARTO 2. AARTO 2 is a computer generated notice. Currently or in the near future, because currently it's only a few people that are actually testing the gadget. So in the near future, officers will be using handheld gadgets to issue notices where they just scan your license, punch in the code, and then print for you that notice. So those will be called AARTO 2. So it's just similar to AARTO 1, is just that this one is generated from a system. And currently, we're issuing this AARTO 2s at Weybridge around Tshwane. That is the only place where we are currently able to issue AARTO 2s. And then we also have an AARTO 31. This is the one that is left on a windscreen of a vehicle for unattended vehicles. And then we also have an AARTO 3. AARTO 3 is a notice that will be served via post. The current act is stating that we need to serve those via registered mail. But in the Amendment Act, we also looked at moving with the times and introducing serving of those notices electronically. So there are 3 types of AARTO 3s. The first AARTO 3 is a camera generated notice where you find that an issuing authority has left a camera, they capture images, and then they go back to their office and download those images. And then those notices are then served via registered mail. And then the second AARTO 3 is a follow-up of the AARTO 31. The AARTO 31 is left on a windscreen of a vehicle, and there will be a follow-up notice that will come with full details of how much is the notice, and then what will be the discounted amount, and all the details will be contained in that AARTO 3. And then we have the third AARTO 3. The third AARTO 3 is an operator infringement. Under Section 49 of the National Road Traffic Act, an operator is required to ensure that before they hand over their vehicle to anyone, that vehicle is in a roadworthy condition. So say, for instance, an operator vehicle is stopped. I'll give an example with an Intercape bus. Say the traffic officer stops an Intercape bus, and then they find that there's a defect on that vehicle. They will issue a notice to that particular driver. So when that notice is captured back at the office, the system will pick up that this is an operator vehicle and generate another notice that will go to the operator. So then this is now going to be related to the operator card of that particular vehicle. So those are the types of AARTO 3s that are actually being served. So let me now take you through the actual process. So once you have received that notice, either you've received it on the side of the road or you've received it via post, and then the process starts, the clock starts ticking. So the green part is my stage 1, which is my first 32 days. So within the first 32 days, a person will have this 5 options. The first option, a person will qualify to pay a discounted amount of 50%. No need to go and negotiate with anyone. You can just go walk to the nearest cashier and then actually settle your infringement notice. And then the second option, this applies to AARTO 3s. A driver can be nominated. Say you are a proxy, and then you check your logbooks, who's the the person that was operating that vehicle on the day that infringement was committed, then you nominate that person. You complete the necessary AARTO forms, and then you submit, and then the notice is then removed from the proxy's name or from the owner's name, and it's transferred into the actual person that committed that offense. And also, if you borrow somebody your private car, you can still nominate a person. I'm not saying that it's limited to companies only. So you can nominate a person as long as you know that you are not the one that committed that offense. And then the third option, you say that you want to dispute the fine for whatever reasons, then you can complete a representation. You can make a representation and state those reasons why you want to dispute that notice. And then the fourth option, you can arrange to pay in installments. However, it's not for all the fines. Or fines that are above 750, you can arrange for this installment payment, and then you complete a form, it's submitted, and then the RTIA will then give you the installments that you can pay over a period of 6 months. And if you opt for this option, it means you're going to forfeit your discounted amount. So if you choose this one, and you lose your 50% discount. And the other thing, if you are given installments to pay over a period of 6 months, you pay first month, second month, and then third month, you think, let me divert my funds to something else, and you skip this your installments, then your notice will move straight to the third stage, which is enforcement order stage. And then the fifth option that we have, you can elect to be tried in court. You say that you want to dispute the fine, you complete a form, and then you submit, and then the issuing authority will then prepare summonses, and then you will be served and go and appear in front of the court so that you can state your case there. So that is our first stage. That is the first 32 days. So after this first 32 days, this alleged infringer does not do anything, does not exercise any of these options. Then as the RTIA, we then issue a courtesy letter. This courtesy letter is just a friendly reminder to say that you received an infringement notice on such and such a date, you did not pay, and please note you've also forfeited your discounted amount. However, this then, because now we've issued a courtesy letter, will come with an additional 60 rand. So if your fine originally was 1,000 rand, it will now be 1,060 rands because a courtesy letter has now been issued. At this stage, these are the options that you will have. There will be no nomination of the driver at this stage, because now other processes have kicked in, so you will not be able to nominate if your notice reaches a courtesy letter stage. So you pay the full amount plus that additional administration fee that I spoke about, the 60 rands, or you can still complete an AARTO 8 and make a representation and state your reasons why you want your notice to be removed. Or you can still elect to be tried in court and go and state your case in front of a magistrate. Or you can still arrange to pay in installments. But remember, I said that then the installments are paid over a period of 6 months, and you can only apply for this option if the fine is above 750. After this 32 days, you still don't do anything. You don't address your fine, you don't go and pay, you don't exercise any of the options. Then the RTIA will then now issue an enforcement order. An enforcement order is now telling you that you are now blocked on notice. You will not be able to do any transaction on notice until you have actually resolved your infringement notice. And at the stage, your notice will then also have another additional 60 rand. So if your notice reaches stage 3, which is enforcement order stage, you will then pay an additional 120 because there's a courtesy letter issued that was issued, and there's also an enforcement order that has actually issued. At this stage, what options do you have? You can pay the full amount and those additional administration fee, or you can apply for revocation of the enforcement order and state the reasons why the enforcement order should be revoked. Right, this slide, I'm just going to take you through the difference between a Criminal Procedure Act and the AARTO Act. So as you may know that other parts of the country, they are still using criminal procedure. So under Criminal Procedure Act, those are the documents that are issued, your section 54, 56, 341, and under AARTO, it's AARTO 1, 2, 3, and 31, but there's also another one, which is AARTO 32, where a person has been arrested. So there's an AARTO 32 that is being completed so that we capture the details on the system. Under CPA, it provides for an arrest if you do not appear in court according to the court date that is written on your notice, then a warrant of arrest will be issued. But under AARTO, you can only go to court for a serious offense. I think my next slide, I'm going to show you the difference between an infringement and an offense, and so only offenses will then go to through the courts system, but the rest of the contraventions will be dealt with administratively. And then under CPA, prosecutors has the power to reduce the fine amount and not provide reasons to the issuing authority, but the AARTO is automatically giving you 50% discount, so you don't even need to go and negotiate with anyone. And then under CPA, the prosecutor may decide not to prosecute and not give reasons, but under AARTO, they will have to provide reasons, and those reasons are actually captured on the National Contravention Register, why that case was not prosecuted. And under CPA, you will, once you pay for your fine, then you will get a criminal record because now you've paid your admission of guilt. But under AARTO, because it's dealt with administratively, there will be no criminal record once you settle your infringement. And under CPA, after a period of 5 years or more, then the magistrate may decide otherwise to say that they are removing all the in contraventions from their role. But under AARTO, it will stay under your name until the notice will stay under your name until you actually go and deal with it, either you pay or you exercise those other options. So even if you disappear and not transact on notice for a period of 10 years, when you come back, you'll still find your notice there. So you'll still be held accountable for your actions. So under CPA, there are no consequences. But with AARTO, as I've indicated, you get an enforcement order, you get blocked on notice, you will not be able to transact. And also, you will also incur demerit points. And in future, once you've incurred demerit points, we're also looking at taking people to rehabilitation programs so that they can change their attitudes towards road safety. So the contraventions, we have more than 2,000 contraventions. So this is just to reflect the classification of the contraventions. We've got infringements, and then we've got offenses. So infringements is anything that you will be issued a notice for, as per the list that I outlined earlier. Either it's an AARTO 1, AARTO 3, AARTO 2, AARTO 31. It will be called an infringement. So I will just give an examples there: fail to wear your seatbelt, driving without a PDP, yeah, and so on and so forth. And then under offenses, so these are the contraventions where then a person will be arrested and will have to appear in front of a magistrate. So this will still be dealt with under a criminal procedure process. So your drinking and driving, excessive speeding, if you're speeding above 40 kilometers above the actual speed limit, reckless driving, negligent driving. And then with AARTO, if you fail to affix both number plates, then you will also be arrested. This is also just a sample of how the charge sheet will look like. We will have the actual charge and the charge code, the description of the charge and the amount, and then the number of demerit points that are actually attached to that particular charge. So okay, Mr. Ngcobo is going to take us through the demerit points. Let me not touch on them. Yeah, so this is the structure of the charge sheet. We just thought that you should at least see how it will look like with the demerit points. So who are the role players within the AARTO space? We have issuing authorities in form of municipalities, metros, and then provincial issuing authorities. This is where the process actually starts, because they must first issue a notice or arrest a person for a contravention before the process to start. And then we also have the licensing departments, your driving license testing centers and registering authorities. We have them because the NCR that I spoke about earlier, but also I think in your presentation, you spoke about the fact that we have a central system. So this NCR that I spoke about earlier, it's a module inside NATIS. So at any point where there is NATIS, they will have access to the NCR and be able to draw your information for whatever infringements that you have and be able to assist you. And then we also have the RTMC because they are actually the agency that takes care of this NATIS and also then the NCR. We have a South African Post Office for posting of the notices. But we also have the Department of Justice, we have magistrate courts, and then the NPA, because they must still deal with offenses and also those that have elected to be tried in court. And then we have government printing works in terms of Regulation 25A of the AARTO regulations. All stationaries for AARTO needs to be procured from government printing works. So that is their role in the value chain. But of course, we have the RTIA in the center as the home of AARTO. And not last but not least is our road users, because they are the main people that are affected by this. So if you want to pay for your notices, you can go to any issuing authority, any DLTC or any RA to go and pay for your notice. But we've also brought on board additional collectors. You can go to any of the pay at platform, your Spar, Checkers, ShopRite, you save, Game, Macro, Builders, and yeah, we have more that we are always bringing on board. Or you can go to any of the major banks to go and settle your infringement, or at post office. We also have somebody here at the office at head office in Midrand, where you can come and settle your infringements, or you can use the online platforms, your Pay My Fine, Pay City. If we have an ABSA app, FNB app, you can also utilize those platforms. And this brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Venda. We really enjoyed that session. Thank you so much. We are a little bit early on time, so what I think I'm going to do is I am going to let us quickly take the 15-minute interval, and then as soon as we are done with the 15-minute interval, then we'll move on to Mr. Kwazi and Ngcobo, and then we will have more time available for questions and answers at the end of the session. If you do, again, have any questions, you're more than welcome to send them to me in the chat section, and then we can take it from there. But I think while we take the 15-minute break, you're more than welcome. Please stay online, and we will be back shortly.
Please take note of the following disclaimer. This is a free webinar, and no attendee has paid or will be asked to pay to join this session. The webinar will be hosted by Upskill Academy in conjunction with the Road Traffic Infringement Agency, also known as the RTIA. This forms part of the AARTO National Rollout Program of the RTIA to create awareness. Welcome to the AARTO and the Demerit System What's Next webinar. While we wait for all the attendees to join, let us cover the housekeeping rules for this webinar. Today's webinar is scheduled to last 3 hours, including the question and answer section. All participants will be muted to enable the speakers to present without interruption. Questions submitted prior to an hour before the start of the webinar will be answered first during the question and answer section. Any additional questions can be submitted via the chat room during the webinar at any time. These will be answered if there is enough time after the pre-submitted questions. There will be a short 15-minute interval at 12:30. Please do not log out or leave the session during the interval period. The recording of this presentation will be provided approximately 72 hours after we conclude. The recording will only be available for a limited period. Welcome to the AARTO and the Demerit System What's Next webinar. While we wait for all the attendees to join, let us cover the housekeeping rules for this webinar. Today's webinar is scheduled to last 3 hours, including the question and answer section. All participants will be muted to enable the speakers to present without interruption. Questions submitted prior to an hour before the start of the webinar will be answered first during the question and answer section. Any additional questions can be submitted via the chat room during the webinar at any time. These will be answered if there is enough time after the pre-submitted questions. There will be a short 15-minute interval at 12:30. Please do not log out or leave the session during the interval period. The recording of this presentation will be provided approximately 72 hours after we conclude. The recording will only be available for a limited period. Welcome to the AARTO and the Demerit System What's Next webinar. While we wait for all the attendees to join, let us cover the housekeeping rules for this webinar. Today's webinar is scheduled to last 3 hours, including the question and answer section. All participants will be muted to enable the speakers to present without interruption. Questions submitted prior to an hour before the start of the webinar will be answered first during the question and answer section. Any additional questions can be submitted via the chat room during the webinar at any time. These will be answered if there is enough time after the pre-submitted questions. There will be a short 15-minute interval at 12:30. Please do not log out or leave the session during the interval period. The recording of this presentation will be provided approximately 72 hours after we conclude. The recording will only be available for a limited period. Welcome to the AARTO and the Demerit System What's Next webinar. While we wait for all the attendees to join, let us cover the housekeeping rules for this webinar. Today's webinar is scheduled to last 3 hours, including the question and answer section. All participants will be muted to enable the speakers to present without interruption. Questions submitted prior to an hour before the start of the webinar will be answered first during the question and answer section. Any additional questions can be submitted via the chat room during the webinar at any time. These will be answered if there is enough time after the pre-submitted questions. There will be a short 15-minute interval at 12:30. Please do not log out or leave the session during the interval period. The recording of this presentation will be provided approximately 72 hours after we conclude. The recording will only be available for a limited period. Welcome to the AARTO and the Demerit System What's Next webinar. While we wait for all the attendees to join, let us cover the housekeeping rules for this webinar. Today's webinar is scheduled to last 3 hours, including the question and answer section. All participants will be muted to enable the speakers to present without interruption. Questions submitted prior to an hour before the start of the webinar will be answered first during the question and answer section. Any additional questions can be submitted via the chat room during the webinar at any time. These will be answered if there is enough time after the pre-submitted questions. There will be a short 15-minute interval at 12:30. Please do not log out or leave the session during the interval period. The recording of this presentation will be provided approximately 72 hours after we conclude. The recording will only be available for a limited period. Please take note of the following disclaimer. This is a free webinar and no attendee has paid or will be asked to pay to join this session. The webinar will be hosted by Upskill Academy in conjunction with the Road Traffic Infringement Agency, also known as the RTIA. This forms part of the AARTO National Rollout Program of the RTIA to create awareness. Hello everyone and welcome to the AARTO and the Demerit Point System webinar. Your host for this webinar is Liesl Erasmus, and she is the Creative and Content Director of Upskill Academy. We want to thank our guest speakers from the Road Traffic Infringement Agency for joining us today. We are all looking forward to their presentations and the information they will be sharing with us. Before I hand it over to Liesl to introduce the panel, we would like to take a short moment of your time to introduce you to Upskill Academy. Upskill Academy is the creators of simplified courses for sometimes complicated yet current, relevant, and mostly required learning for compliance with various laws. The aim is to quickly, easily, and affordably upskill your workforce with the relevant information required for compliance with regulatory matters that may have far-reaching and negative effects on your business. The internet is your classroom. Study anytime, anywhere on any smart device. Train, verify, certify in 3 easy steps. Our training is a perfect solution with minimal disturbance yet maximum impact. Our courses are quick to complete, packed with all the needed information with graded questionnaires and a certificate of completion as proof of training and compliance. Companies are fully embracing e-learning and online learning platforms due to their simplicity of use. We offer the ability to monitor student performance and progress and offer completion of compliance certificates. Cost-effectively mitigate risk for your company. So, how does it work? Courses can be purchased separately or for as little as 100 Rand per month per employee. You can gain access to a constantly growing library of courses for all your employees. This means that your employees will be able to continuously learn various topics. Some of these topics include cybersecurity awareness training, AARTO driver training in ethics, fraud, bribery and managing the risk training, and so much more. The best part, the library constantly grows. Need a course that is not available in our library? No problem, we will research and develop it for you and add it to our library for all our subscribers. If the course you need is company specific, we can still research and develop it for you at a negotiated fee. The first step is to choose whether you want to purchase just the one course or subscribe to our library, which provides access without limits. Step 2 is to log into your profile and get started. All courses consist of modules with videos followed by short questionnaires. The system automatically saves your progress so you can do the course over time. The system also has course compliance controls that require video completion to move on from one module to another. As soon as you've completed all the modules and passed the graded questionnaires, you will receive a certificate of completion. Train, verify, certify, in 3 easy steps. Our clients say it best. Here are just a few testimonials. Now that you know who we are, let's take a quick look at the courses we offer relating to today's topic. So why did we decide to develop courses in Arto? It was a no-brainer. Altogether, our team has a total of 13 years of experience in traffic fine management. With this knowledge and the knowledge our team has in understanding the Arto Act and how it will positively affect the management of traffic fines nationally for companies, we decided to develop 2 e-learning courses. Arto and the new Demerit point system is not all doom and gloom. Yes, if you do not update your policies, train your administration staff and drivers and implement the correct procedures and point monitoring systems, then Arto will affect you negatively. You are probably thinking what can be positive about Arto? Let us look at a few positives. You will be able to access your traffic fine nationally on one system. No more contacting various municipalities or going to various traffic departments to obtain a list of fines. You automatically qualify for a 50% discount, so no more applying for discounts on behalf of a driver. Another positive is that you will be able to submit your elective options electronically, so less paperwork and no more standing in queues at courts. And the biggest positive is that your drivers will be more responsible, if you upskill them effectively, in what the consequences will be for non-compliance. One of the questions most asked by some of the registrants for this webinar is, what are the risks for our company if we do not comply with Arto? We are quickly going to look at some of the potential risks for your proxy, drivers, vehicles, and your insurance when it comes to Arto and the Demerit point system. Let us start by looking at the risk to the company's proxy. The good news is that there is no risk to your proxy. Points will be allocated to the vehicles and drivers of the vehicles. The proxy, therefore, will no longer have to worry about warrants issued in his name for company traffic fines. So, what are the risks to your drivers? If you implement Arto correctly within your company and upskill your traffic fine administrators, then all fines will be nominated to the responsible driver and demerit points allocated to the driver's license. Ultimately, your drivers can get their licenses suspended or cancelled after a 3rd suspension. This in turn will mean a loss of job and loss of income. The other risk to the company when it comes to drivers is that if you do not have your policies and procedures in place and you did not upskill your driver, you might not be able to take any steps against the driver. Internal memos and notices around the office might not be seen as sufficient training. A trained driver will most definitely be more careful and will be more likely to adhere to the road traffic laws of South Africa. Did you know that the vehicles in your fleet can also receive demerit points? Your vehicles can therefore also receive a suspended license and cancelled license after a 3rd suspension. This means that you will have to implement a system to monitor the points of your vehicles. You will also need to upskill anyone responsible for ensuring that your vehicles are licensed and roadworthy. If your fleet cannot operate at full capacity, it will affect your revenue, delivery of service to your clients, and this will negatively affect your brand. Lastly, we are going to look at the risk to your insurance. If your company does not implement an Arto policy and procedure and a system to monitor demerits, you might not be aware that a driver is using a vehicle with a suspended or cancelled license. Now, if that driver has an accident with a suspended or cancelled license, your insurance company will not pay out the claim. You will also not be able to hold the driver responsible for any damages if the driver was not provided sufficient training in Arto and the consequences of non-compliance. Upskill Academy offers 2 e-learning courses. The first course, Understanding Arto, is for HR, managers, and administrators. The course contains 6 modules and covers the whole act from when points are allocated, when drivers' licenses are suspended, to demerit points, how to make AARTO a core business focus, and the consequences of non-compliance. The second Understanding AARTO driver training course was specifically designed as a tool for companies to upskill their drivers. This course contains 6 modules covering everything from the demerit point system, consequences of demerit points, how to use the online system, and more. The newest module of this course covers what your company's AARTO policy and procedure might look like and ensures the driver understands the consequences of not complying. Our training is a perfect solution with minimal disturbance yet maximum impact. Both courses are quick to complete, packed with all the needed information with graded questionnaires and a certificate of completion as proof of training and compliance. The courses are also available in 3 languages: English, Xhosa, and Zulu. If you are interested in any of our AARTO courses, please feel free to contact us after the webinar. Please take note of the following disclaimer. This is a free webinar and no attendee has paid or will be asked to pay to join this session. The webinar will be hosted by Upskill Academy in conjunction with the Road Traffic Infringement Agency. This forms part of the AARTO National Rollout Program of the RTIA to create awareness.
Okay, let's just give Mr. Ngcobo a bit of time.
Morning, Lizelle, and good morning, all the colleagues.
Morning.
Sorry, Lizelle, seems like my connection is unstable here, but I think I'll be able to proceed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, everyone, my presentation will focus on the points demerit system. Points demerit system, which is Chapter 4 of the AARTO Act. So that's where our focus is going to be at today. I'm trying to share my document. Okay, I think you can see it's that side.
Yes, we can see it.
To make it bigger. Okay, all right. I think you can see it there. Let me try to make it a slideshow.
Okay, not a problem. We can definitely see it.
All right. All right. So the point demerit system is very important to know that to note that it has not yet been implemented. It will only be activated when Chapter 4 of the AARTO Act is rolled out. We anticipate that will happen when all the procedures that Venda was talking about has been, after those processes are applicable throughout the nation, then we will have the points demerit system being proclaimed by the president. So it's not yet active, but it's quite important to understand it so that to start preparing now. When the system is implemented, then you know that you won't have a lot of problems. You'll be able to manage it correctly. Okay, my presentation will touch on the introduction of the point demerit system, the implications of this system, how are the points calculated, to whom are these points applicable to, how are the points incurred or allocated to the alleged infringers, how are the points reduced, how is the disqualification period going to be calculated, how does the cancellation process work, what are the implications for the operator. Then we will go to Q&A session. So the point demerit system is part of the wider traffic law sanctioning system. It assigns points to drivers and owners of the vehicle when committed traffic infringement or offenses. Venda is already differentiated between an infringement and offense. Not going to dwell on that. So if there's no offense or infringement, then you won't get any point. So the behavior is very important. Behavior of the driver, the roadworthiness of the vehicle as well is also important. Just obeying the rules of the road. Then you don't have to worry about the point demerit system if you behave in a correct manner. But if a certain period the collected points maybe can exceed a specific limit or a threshold, then you can find yourself being prohibited from driving or your license being suspended or even having your documents being cancelled over and above the regular monetary sanctions of paying a penalty fee. The aim of the points demerit system is to deter drivers and prevent them from offending or re-offending or infringing in traffic. So this system was designed to prevent drivers from committing traffic violations. Because if it's there and people are aware of it, they'll try by all means that they don't end up incurring points. So it's to discourage people from misbehaving on our roads, which most of the time leads to accidents, serious injuries, and fatalities. For those who repeatedly commit traffic violations, the point demerit system will result in a ban from driving. Like I said, you can be suspended, your document can be suspended, or it can be cancelled. So you'll be prohibited or banned from driving. And then this is temporary, whether it's cancelled or suspended, because even with the cancelled document, after a certain period of time, you can be able to apply for a new one. So under no circumstances that the point demerit system might lead to a permanent ban, but that lies in a person's behavior. He or she can be the cause of a permanent ban if we keep on incurring points, even if you are prohibited, then you won't be allowed to drive. Okay, what are the implications of the system? To make it easier to identify habitual offenders and infringers. When they did talk about habitual offenders, people who always commit violations. And so it will be easier to identify those type of people because everyone's record or the driver, licensed driver is on notice. So notice the system, that's where the point demerit system points will be recorded, because this National Contravention Register that the AARTO Act is using to record information about infringement is part of notice. So all the information will be there, but the name of the module will change when we roll out to the National Road Traffic Offences Register, because that will be in line with the Amendment Act of 2019. So this system will also increase compliance with the road traffic laws, since people will be discouraged from committing traffic violations. It will eventually lead to safer roads and improved driver behavior. It will also lead to reduction in road crashes, serious injuries, and fatalities. Persons will be disqualified from driving, and licenses will be cancelled, especially for those who are habitual offenders or infringers. Calculation of the points. How are the points going to be calculated? We all start at 0. So these points will be incurred, and points are based on the level of seriousness of the traffic violation that will be committed. We have Schedule 3 of the AARTO regulations, which is like a charge book, whereby all the traffic violations, whether offenses or infringers, or whether offenses or infringements, they are recorded there, aligned with the other applicable pieces of legislations like the National Road Traffic Act, the National Transport Land Act, the Cross-Border Act as well. So we have those violations there being listed, their seriousness, their points, penalties. So they are all there on Schedule 3, which is like a charge book in this AARTO environment. So this Schedule 3, it applies throughout the country. It will apply throughout the country once this AARTO Act is rolled out. You won't have a situation similar like the current one, whereby you have different penalties for Durban, different penalties for Cape Town, and so on and so forth. So the system introduces uniformity as well when it comes to penalties and the demerit points that are being allocated. All of them, whether you're in Cape Town or you're in the Popo, wherever, the same schedule will be applicable throughout the country. Points will be added to the record of a person, and points will diminish over time. 1 point every 3 months will be reduced. And points will also be reduced upon completion of a rehabilitation program. So the AARTO Act also, or the AARTO regulations and the AARTO Act also introduces the rehabilitation program, whereby drivers can be able to attend this program only once a year. We will not be allowed to attend it more 2 times or even more than 2 times a year. In fact, you're only just going to be able to attend this program once a year. Upon completion of the program, then we can have your points being reduced maybe by 4 points. That's what was proposed in the draft regulations. But to attend this program, which will be like a refresher course for drivers, but we also anticipate that we will also have programs that are maybe crafted for particular issues, maybe like drunken driving, maybe speeding, just tailor-made based on the violations that the person is committing frequently. So there will be different types of programs, because the aim here is not to punish, but the aim is to make sure that people are safe on the roads and they don't end up maybe losing their jobs based on failure to comply, which will lead to suspension or cancellation. So this rehabilitation program will come as that nurturing hand of the RTIA. So To whom is this system applicable to? All persons might accumulate demerit points. Whether you're a foreigner, whether you're a South African, whether it's a juristic person like an organization, everyone, if you commit violations, points can be allocated based on the seriousness of the violation that is committed. Points are recorded against the record of the person, the ID number. Chapter 4 of the AARTO Act, which deals with points demerit system, refers to allocation of points to persons. Demerit points are allocated to learner drivers as well. Even people without licenses will accumulate demerit points. Foreigners as well, foreign drivers also accumulate demerit points. So the system is not discriminating. If the license has been cancelled, points will still be added, even if we have exceeded the threshold. And if they are added, it means the period on which you'll be able to apply for a new document will be extended as well. So if disqualified in driving, you'll be charged accordingly and points will be allocated accordingly. So the system is applicable to everyone. In carrying of points, like I said earlier, there will be infringements and offenses as per Schedule 3, which I said is the charge code within the AARTO environment. When are these points going to be allocated or incurred? Only when you pay. When you make a payment, it's an admission of guilt. Let's say that you were caught driving without wearing a seat belt. They give you an AARTO 1. Remember the AARTO 1 that Ms. Mamabolo was talking about. They stop you. Traffic officer sees that no, this person is not wearing a seat belt. Write an AARTO 1, give it to you. The following day, you go and make a payment, maybe via internet or whatever method that you'll be using. Once that payment is recorded, the demerit points will be recorded as well. So the 4 demerit points that Venda was talking about the seat belt, it will be recorded on your name. And when you say, okay, I cannot afford to pay, remember Venda also talked about arrangement for payment in installment. Let's say this fine for, let me call it the right name in terms of the AARTO Act is the infringement. So let's say this infringement maybe for not wearing a seatbelt. Let's say maybe it's 1,000 rand. Then if you apply for installment, you say, no, I want to pay this 1,000 rand over the period of 3 months. You've already, again, you are accepting that no, you committed a traffic violation. So as soon as that arrangement is accepted or approved by the RTIA, since that is an admission of guilt as well, the points will be added. So paying does not mean that you will not accumulate points. Payment or arranging to pay will also lead to accumulation of points. Some people, they refer to this point demerit system as the equalizer between the rich and the poor. Because like Venda was saying that with the Criminal Procedure Act, we have people who are rich or who have money, just paying and say, no, anyway, I'm just going to pay this and continue driving. So they don't care, because as long as you have money under the Criminal Procedure Act, there's nothing much that can happen to you unless you commit a very serious traffic violation. But with the AARTO Act, whether you are rich or poor, whether you can afford to pay or not, if a traffic violation is committed, based on the seriousness of that violation in line with Schedule 3 of the AARTO regulations, you will be held accountable. So let's say now, you say, no, I'm not going to pay. I'm just going to ignore this infringement notice. And then after 32 days, they send, RTIA authorizes a courtesy letter. And then maybe after a few days, that courtesy letter is served or presumed served to yourself. Then you still ignore the courtesy letter. Then 32 days after the courtesy letter is served or presumed served, RTIA will authorize an enforcement order now. Then this enforcement order, once it's issued, then the demerit points will be allocated as well. Whether you ignore or you don't ignore, the points will be better to attend to the discount and the other fees. It's better to attend, the sooner the better. If found guilty in court, again, that will lead to allocation of points. Say you are found guilty for drunken driving, which is an offense according to that slide that Venda was sharing with us, then 6 points will be added to your name for committing such an offense. And these points will be added on the actual date of making that payment, or when the arrangement for installment is approved or accepted by the RTIA, from the date when we are found guilty, also from the date of authorization of an enforcement order. But in case of 2 or more traffic violations in the same case, points will only be allocated for violations with the highest point value. So what does this mean? Let me just make an example. You have maybe someone, to make an example of a taxi driver, but it's just an example. And let's say we have a taxi driver. This person is driving a taxi under the influence of liquor, and then crosses a red traffic light. The traffic officer stopped the driver. Then the traffic officer realized that, okay, maybe the traffic officer requests for the PDP to be produced. Driver says, no, I don't have the PDP. Remember the charge that the vendor was talking about that carries 4 points, then it will be applicable. And then the traffic officer says that, no, man, you're not even wearing a seatbelt. Another 4 points now for that violation. And then traffic officer said, by the way, I stopped you for crossing a red traffic light. That is another 4 points again. Maybe while they are still talking, then you can see, man, seems like this person is intoxicated. And then upon confirming that, also charge him for committing an offense now, drunken driving. So if you add all of these points of the PDP, 4 points seatbelt, 4 points offense, 6 points crossing a red traffic light, 4 points, then we have about 18 points there. But the AARTO Act is saying that no. In a case whereby two or more traffic violations are committed in the same case or under the same set of circumstances, only the violation with the highest point value, the demerit points for that particular one will be recorded. So under these circumstances, the violation with the highest point value will be that offense of drunken driving. If found guilty in court, only that offense only points for that offense will be recorded, not the points for other infringements, since they were all committed under the same set of circumstances. If the court decision has been appealed, points will be kept in suspense pending the finalization of the appeal. So the points will be reduced every 3 months, like I did explain. Whether you commit or you don't commit traffic violation, Section 28 of the AARTO Act is saying every 3 months points must be reduced. Also, 4 points will be reduced upon completion the rehabilitation program. So if you continue to behave in a correct manner or respecting the rules of the road, you can have a situation where you end up being back to 0 points based on your behavior. So if you behave in a good manner, the points will be reduced. Disqualification period. 3 months for every point above 15 points will lead to a disqualification. 1 point above 15 points will lead to a 3 month disqualification period. So again, if I can make an example, say you're driving today, you are caught drunken driving, then that will be 6 points. Then maybe after a week or so, you're caught driving without PDP, then 10 points. Then after that, you are caught driving without wearing a seat belt, then we have 14 points. Then after a week or two, then you are caught crossing a red traffic light, then you have 18 points. Then 18 points, meaning that if it's 1 point over, it's 3 months for every point above 15 points. It means if you are in 18, you are looking at 9 months suspension. You can see the calculations there, they are talking about a person that maybe has accumulated 17 points, and then that will be 2 points above 15. That will lead to 6 months. So that is quite a very long period. The suspension period, it is quite very long, in such a way that maybe some employers can even dismiss or fire such persons if they cannot drive anymore, especially if you are appointed to drive vehicles or you are a messenger that is required to drive vehicles of that particular company. So that's why now there is this rehabilitation program. That okay, you are on 18 points now, you are disqualified for 3 months, But if you attend this rehabilitation program, it can be about a week or two, then you can have a situation where your points are decreased or reduced by 4 points. Then you can be back to 14 points and be allowed to drive again. And then hopefully you will behave and then the points will be reduced. Instead of having a situation that we will have a lot of people being dismissed or losing their jobs based on this system. There is this rehabilitation program where it's like a refresher and type of a training. And then, but it must not be abused. Like I said earlier, you can only attend that only once, only once a year. Then 32 days after the date in which the notification of suspension is served, then you will be disqualified and points are age 15 or lower, then you will be allowed to drive. Infringers must be notified in a prescribed manner in line with section 26 of the AARTO Act. If the enforcement order, remember I said also the enforcement order can lead to demerit points being allocated. If that enforcement order is revoked, maybe you are complaining that, okay, you are charging me for speeding. Maybe that violations carries maybe 3 demerit points. And it's served via the AARTO 03. And then you found out that no man, it seemed like this AARTO 03 was not served within the prescribed timelines. Currently, the prescribed timeline is 40 days. Maybe you make a revocation, you complain about that failure or to adhere to that procedure or the time frame. Then if the adjudicators check and say, yes, indeed, this was not served on time, then the application can be successful. Enforcement order is revoked. Then once it's revoked, the relevant actions are reversed, meaning that even the 4 points that was incurred will also be reduced upon revocation of an enforcement order. Cancellation, if disqualified 3 times, all documents are cancelled. For individuals here, let's say you have a PDP and the license, both of them will be cancelled. If the license is cancelled, disqualification period is 3 continuous months for every point above 15. Persons keep points on his record, again here on the cancellation phase as well. If the enforcement order is revoked, all actions are reversed. And remember, the cancellation, it means that even if after disqualification period has ended, if you are back at 15, does not mean you're going back to the road. You have to apply for a new document in order for you to be allowed to drive again. So what are the important matters to consider as operators and heuristic person? You must ensure that you nominate persons in control of the vehicle or the driver that was driving the vehicle. You must keep accurate records. You must be able to know who's driving this vehicle at this particular point in time so that you can be able to nominate accordingly. Because failure to nominate, that means that those points that are related to that violation, they will be allocated to that vehicle that was used to commit that traffic violation. But they will never be allocated to proxies and representatives. So proxies and representatives, don't worry, these points will not be allocated to you as person, but it's your responsibility to make sure that you don't end up having a lot of vehicles, company vehicles, being suspended due to failure to nominate the drivers. So the infringements for roadworthiness will create operator infringements for owners of vehicles. I think Venda did talk about this one. I'm not going to dwell on it so much. Operators will be held responsible for vehicle-related infringements. These points will be allocated to the vehicles. And then points incurred will be allocated to vehicles. Again, with motor vehicles as well. If 15 points is exceeded, that motor vehicle will not be allowed to be operated on the public road. So it won't be the whole fleet, but for that particular motor vehicle. And it's not the proxy as well that will be suspended. It's the vehicle that will not be allowed to operate on the road once that particular vehicle exceed 15 points. So now, in general, motorists must always keep their record updated. Make sure who's driving, know who's driving your vehicle at what time, so that should that person commit a traffic violation or infringement, you'll be able to nominate timelessly to avoid demerit points being allocated to your company or yourself as the owner of the vehicle. Suspended licenses and operator card would also impact on the operations of the company. Because obviously, if you have one of your vehicles that's not allowed to be operated on the public road, so it will affect your plans or your operations as well. So very important that you keep your vehicles roadworthy. You know who was driving your vehicles. Then as proxies, then you won't have a lot of stress. The PDS will also impact on labor, business relations. I like that video that was an introduction video that Lizelle was playing, that you must be able to amend your policies accordingly in anticipation of this system, because it will really have an impact on labor issues. Especially, let's say you want to fire a driver that is suspended now. There can be some labor issues that can come from that, of which the company should be prepared and try to design or draft some policies that will deal with those type of situations. Payment of traffic fines on behalf of other drivers must be done with their consent. If you are a proxy and then there's an AARTO 1, maybe your driver was charged for driving a vehicle with smooth tires, whereby they will stop him, give him an AARTO 1. That AARTO 1 is for the driver, for driving that vehicle with smooth tires, but there's still going to be an operator fine. There will be an operator infringement notice that will be served now to the company. So you have these two documents, but the driver come back and say, but it's your fault, employer. It's you who said I must drive this vehicle, so you must pay. But then you pay. But sometimes you just find out, okay, it was a violation that's pertaining to the roadworthiness of the vehicle, then you just pay. Without that person's consent, you must know that you are putting that person at risk. Maybe he was going to challenge the infringement, but if you pay, make sure that with that person's consent, payment is admission of guilt which will also lead to incurring of demerit points. So if you want to access your driver's permission as a company or the proxy, also that one should be done with the driver with the driver's consent or permission. So all entities must have accurate record management system. Especially the proxies must have some way of making sure that you know exactly where are your vehicles, who's driving them, are they licensed, when are the licenses going to expire, check them, do inspection once in a while, every system that they are checked for readiness as well, so that you know that you are on the right side of the law. So this system was not designed to punish people, but it was designed to ensure that there's high level of road safety in South Africa, taking into consideration that there's more than 14,000 people that are dying on our road on an annual basis. So it's one of the interventions to make sure that there's high level of road safety. That's as long as we obey the rules of the road. It's not something that we need to stress about. We just make sure that we obey the rules of the road, then we are on the right side of the law. I'm not going to talk about the road players. Venda already touched on that. That's the end of my presentation. Lizelle and everyone that is attending, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kwazi. That was a really informative session. I'm going to ask the speakers from the RTIA and everybody from the RTIA that has joined us, if you can please just unmute yourselves for the Q&A section. I am going to share my screen with the questions and answers so we can go through them quickly. We have about 25 questions that I'm going to see if we can answer all of them. If we do not get to all the questions today, please just continue adding them in the chat section and we will do our best to answer them after the session. Okay. Okay, so the first question that we have is, what is the impact of the recent High Court ruling instituted by Alta on the rollout or implementation of AARTO? Will the point demerit system still be implemented on the 1st of July in 2022? I believe the first part of the question has been answered during the session. If anybody from the RTIA panel can just, on the second part, basically answer to say if the system will still be implemented on the 1st of July.
Thank you, Lizelle. Let me take that one.
Okay.
You remember that there was a plan that comes with phases.
Yes.
And then, so the situation that we are facing right now, whereby we have this challenge, or this constitutional challenge about the AARTO Act, obviously is delaying our plans and the phases as well. Because this demerit points that was going to be implemented on the 1st of July, it was phase 4, but we only implemented phase 1. So we will wait up until we get the constitutional court ruling on the constitutionality of the AARTO Act. Then we will continue with the phases. Phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 as well. So if you look at where we are now, we are towards the end of March. So it's highly unlikely that we can reach phase 4 so quick. So there will be delays, but we cannot come with the exact date for now, because we will go back to those stages after the confirmation from the Constitutional Court that ARTO is valid and constitutional. Then we will come back with the new dates on how are we going to roll out ARTO. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Kwazi. Okay, the next question that we have is, will the government start emailing traffic fines going forward?
Let me take that one as well. That also will depend on the proclamation of the ARTO Amendment Act. That was also going to be done when we roll out.
Okay.
So currently, since we still have this constitutional challenge, the president cannot proclaim the act. But as soon as we cross this bridge, or we are over this a dark cloud over our heads, and it's confirmed that ARTO is valid and constitutional, the president will proclaim that particular section which talks to electronic service. Then once that proclamation is made by the president, only then we can be able to email these documents via electronic means. But what I want to clarify here as well is that electronic service does not substitute service via post. Both of them will be applicable based on the choices that will be done by the choices that will be made by the users. So electronic service does not automatically replace postage.
Okay. Thank you. The next question, and I think that will also be the same, that we will have to wait for the proclamations to be made, is, will there be any cost to checking demerit points?
Yes. In terms of the draft regulations that were published for comments, there were costs that were anticipated for that process. So it's highly possible that there will be cost, but I cannot talk about the regulations so much right now because they are not yet approved. But the draft regulations, they anticipating that there will be cost.
Okay, thank you. Then, is Arto going to be implemented, and do I need to assure compliance or just place it on hold? I will just answer this one. I think it's going to be each company's decision on whether they want to, implement the Arto procedures now already and train their drivers now already, or if they're going to wait for the ruling of the Constitutional Court. I have quite a number of companies that is continuing on with the training because it has actually affected their driver behavior. So I think, it is up to the company itself to make that decision if they are going to start to make their drivers aware and implement training and start working on their policies and procedures now, or place it on hold. I think if you do place it on hold and Arto continues with the next phases after the decision has been made, you might have limited time available to do that. So I feel that is each company's decision whether they are going to continue now or whether they are going to place it on hold until there is a ruling. Anybody wants to add on to that?
Yeah, let me just add there, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Advocate Moletsane did mention earlier that the ARTO Act is still applicable up until is confirmed by the Constitutional Court whether it's invalid or what. So it's very important to always comply, because we are we are still waiting for the confirmation of the High Court ruling whether the AARTO Act is invalid or not. So it's best to comply as far as it is implemented currently in Pretoria and Johannesburg, but we will hold the rollout up until we get confirmation from the Constitutional Court. But the drivers or the motorists must still comply to the rules of the road and the AARTO Act. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. The next question is, what will the effects of AARTO on drivers? What will be the effects of AARTO on drivers that travel between SADC countries?
Yeah. This question, you can look at it. Maybe you can say what is the effects on drivers that maybe are not South Africans, like those from SADC countries. Maybe you have a driver from Zimbabwe coming to South Africa and then committing traffic violations. You remember that I said the point demerit system is also applicable to foreigners as well. So even drivers from Mozambique, when they come to South Africa, when you commit a traffic violation, when that violation is recorded, that driver is introduced on notice. So there will be points allocated to them as well. When they exceed that 50 points threshold, they will not be allowed to drive, even with their foreign driving licenses. But the difference with them is that we as South African government, we don't have powers to cancel documents that are issued by other countries, but we have powers to say, okay, according to our records, this document or the person who's the holder of this document has exceeded the threshold. So you are not allowed to drive in South Africa, but they can drive in their home countries where AARTO is not applicable. Thank you.
Perfect. Then payments of fines are a huge problem. No banking details. Large companies want to load a beneficiary and not stand in queues. I know that from my personal experience in traffic fine management that is a big problem with the current CPA system, where some municipalities only allow payments to be made at the municipality. Am I correct in saying, Kwazi, that for the AARTO Act and for AARTO currently, that if you contact AARTO, that there would be, AARTO will be able to supply banking details for companies to make payments on bulk fines? Is that an option available to them?
Let me give that question maybe to Ms. Mamabolo.
Okay, Ms. Mamabolo, will you be able to answer it? Or I see Mr. Van Eden has also raised his hand.
Yes, Lizelle, if you are paying for a company, you will receive, you can contact our revenue section and they will give you banking details, and you do that bulk payment and allocate for the notices that you are actually paying for. So yeah, that is doable. But I think Mr. Van Eden wants to add.
Okay, not a problem. Mr. Van Eden?
Thank you. So one of the concerns that Mr. Ngcobo raised is that if you pay the fines and there were drivers, points will be allocated. So at the end of the day, the nomination must take place. The person who drove the vehicle must take accountability. And that person must then pay the fine. So if you look at fleet owners, the person who drove the vehicle need to be nominated so that the infringement can be issued to the actual driver of the vehicle. And then that person must then apply his or her mind, what he or she wants to do. And then if he or she wants to pay, then that person can pay. So, yes, we do give banking details to companies for bulk payments, but one must be very careful of that when you pay and that you get points and then your vehicles may be disqualified. So, and why we also do not make the banking details available is EFTs don't properly update the payment of the fine. The payment channels that we use with the interfaces between the banks and the service payment channels is to update the infringement properly and correctly. If EFT is used, then someone, a manual process is required to get the bank statement, go through the bank statement, and then update the traffic fine or the specific fine. If it's not updated in time and correctly, the next moment the system will generate the enforcement order. So we had banking details on the notices before. It created a lot of mismanagement, or not mismanagement, but misalignment or not updating the actual traffic fines. So so before you do bulk updates, please apply your mind, because it may have significant implications, especially when the points come in. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Mr. Van Eeden. I can also say from traffic fine management, and I think that people need to understand that with AARTO and the demerit system coming in, companies need to understand that your processes need to change. My experience from traffic fine management with companies is that a lot of companies at the moment do not nominate or redirect the fines to the drivers. They basically apply for a reduction on behalf of the drivers, or just make payments of the fines on behalf of the drivers and then just deduct those amounts from their salaries. So with AARTO, what companies really need to realize, and what the payment and everything will come in with that, is that your process needs to change from paying the fines on behalf of the drivers to nominating the fines to the drivers. If you don't nominate, you are going to have consent from the driver. So please just be aware of that with the new AARTO and the demerit system, your company is going to have to relook at how you currently deal with fines, because a lot of companies, the way they currently deal with fines will not be applicable for when AARTO and the demerit system comes into place, or the demerit system specifically. The next question. Yes.
I just want to add, I saw that the revenue email address has been shared. You can use that email address as well to, if you make payment and the payment didn't update accordingly, that you can send your proof of payment also to that revenue address, and the finance unit will then update accordingly. I just want to highlight with bulk payments as well is please use that same email address and just make contact with the agency before you just do bulk payments. You need to arrange with a particular person that will agree that you will be able to do bulk payments in order for you to send together with your payment details the notice numbers that needs to be updated accordingly. So please don't just do bulk payments and assume that it will be updated. Make arrangements through that email address, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Inti. Thank you, Auntie. Yes, if you can put an Excel list or something together with the infringement numbers, that will obviously be the best to arrange it prior with the RTIA. Okay, then the next question is, are there plans to change AARTO to a different system? I don't think there is any plans, but if AARTO does become unconstitutional, are there any plans for a different system?
We will give a question to Mr. Van Eden, Lizette.
Okay.
Thank you. So let's just look at it practical from a practical point of view. Under the Criminal Procedure Act, the prosecution or adjudication of the traffic offence is through the court process, which is a very labor-intensive and time-consuming process. If you drove through, if you committed an infringement in Cape Town and you are being prosecuted, you don't pay your notice online, and you have to go to court. You have to go to court in Cape Town. So AARTO provides for an administrative process to adjudicate the road traffic offences. So we have offences, all of them are offences, but some of them are classified or categorized as infringements that will follow an administrative process to make it easier and faster, and the other others are offences where you have to, if you don't just pay it, you have to appear in court. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to achieve is that people who commit offences need to account for those offences. So the one part of AARTO is the adjudication process to speed up the prosecution or adjudication of infringements and still make it just and fair. So that's the one component. The other component is the demerit points, where if people continue to commit infringements, that there's another mechanism to block them from using the roads. Now, at the moment, when you found in the court, if you found guilty of drunken driving, the court can suspend or cancel your license. And again, for companies, even though AARTO is not applicable yet, you already have to have control over your vehicles. If there's a hit and run accident, you need to say then, but this was the person who used the vehicle at this date and time, and this is the driver who must then account for this hit and run accident. If the court suspends a license of a driver, you cannot use that driver to continue driving your vehicles. So already there's even without AARTO, there's an obligation to make sure that you have proper control over your drivers, make sure that you are aware if the licenses get suspended, even if it's by court. So it's not as if with AARTO you'll be disqualified, then you can verify it, but even without AARTO, people need to have control. So if there's another way of making sure that offenders account for their infringements or offences, and then they did just pay it because they have the money and then continue as is. If there's any other idea to make it, to achieve the same objectives, we would like to hear about, we would like to hear those ideas. So this points demerit system is used in many countries, and but if there's alternative measures, then we would like to hear those. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Eden. Okay, our next question is, many times fines arrive in the post well after 32-day period, so you never get the option to get the discount. I'm not sure if that is a question or just a statement. Do you want to answer anything on that question?
Yes, Lizelle, the AARTO 03 that Venda was talking about, the one that is currently sent via post. So most of the time, those are camera files. So the AARTO regulations are saying that those types of infringement notices, they must be served or caused to be served to the infringer within 40 days. So it's not 32 days. It's within 40 days from the commitment of that particular infringement. Then once that document is served or presumed served, only then the 32 days will start counting. So we do have situations whereby these documents, they are not served or caused to be served within the prescribed timeline of 40 days, maybe due to support challenges and other reasons. So when that happens, the infringer or the alleged infringer has an option, an AARTO elective option, to challenge that infringement and say, but you failed to adhere to your timelines here. Can you please consider canceling this particular infringement because you did not adhere to your own timelines? Then that person can make a representation, send it via the website to RTIA. The representations officers within RTIA will check and verify whether is it true that the document was not served within the prescribed timelines. If it really was not served within the prescribed timelines, you can have a situation whereby that infringement can be cut. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Kwazi. The next question is, how will the issuance of fines be improved to achieve reduction of the time delays? Is there any, I think that will also take a part of the electronic options if that becomes available. That will also assist that, if you want to answer us on that.
Yeah. Correct, Lisa. The electronic service is there to improve the time delays. We are in an environment now where we are talking about the fourth industrial revolution. We are encouraged to use online facilities, especially after COVID. A lot of people are familiar with online facilities. A lot of people are working from home. So this electronic service is part of digitalizing the environment. And we think it will also lead to a reduction of time delays as well.
Yes. I also want to say with that is that I think once AARTO becomes a national system and the demerit system is nationally, the electronic will definitely assist companies because you will be able to deal with your fines on one system nationally. It will definitely take away any delays that there was with any, not just with AARTO, but with fines not being received currently through the CPA system, where people will only become available or aware of fines when it reaches a warrant situation. So I really feel that with the national implementation and the electronic, it will definitely give companies a better way to manage their fines because it will all be available on one place. Okay, the next question is, would it be possible to make a pre-issuing electronic file available to small fleet owners? This will allow the actual fine to be issued correctly and reduce turnaround times. I think what this person does mean is, would they be, before issuing the fine, would they be able to allocate the drivers prior to you issuing the fine?
Sorry, Kwazi, I can take it. Don't worry.
Okay.
Lizelle, currently we do have an option of electronic nomination interface, whereby
Okay.
fleet companies can apply for access to that interface, and they will be able to then do this redirection before the notice is actually issued to them. So once you have applied and a permission has been granted that you can interface with notice, you will be able to then draw your fines on a daily basis and see what has been issued, identify the driver by means of supplying through this interface the driver's license card number and the ID number of the person that you would like to nominate, and that notice will then, the original notice will then be cancelled and the new notice will be automatically redirected to the driver concerned. But this is only applicable to South African drivers at this point in time, because you must exist on notice and the system must be able to reconcile your driver's license card number and your ID number to the system to agree that you have nominated the correct person. You're welcome to share my email address at the end of the session. Fleet companies would like to participate in this electronic nomination interface is welcome to approach me, and I will supply the documents in order to apply accordingly. But it's a very, statistics show that during the course of last year, when we still had in the beginning some camera law enforcement, we had on average about 6,000 redirections that's done through the electronic nomination interface. So I will really recommend that if you're a fleet company with 2 or more vehicles on your fleet, please apply for this option. Even now, before you prepare for AARTO, before we go national, I would also recommend that you start applying for this electronic nomination interface. Thank you, Liza.
Thanks, Henty. That is fantastic news. I know the companies will really appreciate that news. I will share your information with the email that I sent with the replay link after the session, so that everybody that wants to apply for that can contact you directly. Thank you. Okay, then can I apply to pay my enforcement order with the installment option is one of the questions that I received.
Lizelle, the option of paying in installment or arranging to pay installment is only available during that phase of an infringement notice and a courtesy letter. Once the enforcement order is issued, the option of paying or arranging an installment is no longer available. The full payment will be required, or the alleged infringer can apply for revocation of an enforcement order, but the reason cannot be that you want to pay in installment. But if, let's say, you have a situation whereby you applied before an enforcement order was issued, you applied to pay in installment, but your application was not captured on time, maybe by the issuing authority or the RTIA, you can make you can apply for revocation of an enforcement order and say, no, I applied to pay installment before the enforcement order was issued. Here's a proof of submission of my documents. Can you please revoke the enforcement order? Because I made the arrangement on time, but the fault was maybe issuing authorities or the RTIA that did not process the application on time. Then, under those circumstances, we can be able to revoke and allow installment.
Okay, thank you, Kwazi. I also feel that with this question, just for our fleet managers out there, it's really imperative that you train your drivers to understand their options so that they know they only have the infringement notice time to actually apply to pay their fines in installments. Okay, the next question is, how is this going to be managed for the taxi industry?
So let's give that question to Ms. Mamabolo.
Okay, Ms. Mamabolo.
How is this going to be managed for the taxi industry? Referring to what? The AARTO processes
Yes, I think the question is from the side, is the taxi industry going to fall or have to comply with the AARTO and the demerit point system as any other normal person, or are they going to have a different, how are they going to manage it?
Oh, okay, no. Yes, every person who is a road user will have to comply with the AARTO regulations, be it an operator or just a private person. And also the demerit points threshold will be equal for everyone. It will not be different for operators or individual people. So as much as everybody is expected to follow the rules of the road, also the taxi industry or any public transport operators are expected to comply. We do have some engagements with the taxi industry. We do have educational campaigns and awareness that we normally take to taxi ranks, so that we ensure that we also educate also those taxi drivers and the taxi operators. So everyone, as long as you're driving on the South African road, you will be expected to comply with the AARTO regulations. I know maybe this is coming from the issue of e-tolls. I know with e-tolls, there's some special dispensation for public transport operators, but when it comes to this, everyone else will be expected to comply. Thank you, Lizelle.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, not everyone having electric access email, the SA Post Office is not reliable. How will this affect the notice process? I think again, with this specifically, a person will still be able to go into one of the AARTO offices. I know that AARTO is opening AARTO centers across South Africa where people will be able to go in and actually access their fines and make payment thereof. Is there anything that you would like to add? Okay, doesn't seem like it. I'm just going to move on to this. Yes.
Lizelle, it's Gert.
Okay.
So the AARTO website, the members are requested to make sure that you are registered on the AARTO website, that your email address is correct, and cell phone number. So what we're looking at with the RTMC is to say whether we can, in addition to the standard serving procedure of registered mail or ordinary mail or email, that one can maybe send a SMS, but that will not serve as, that will not qualify as a proper serving. It's just like a reminder or a notification or a just a prompt to say that there is something that you need to attend to on the AARTO website. So on the AARTO website, when you're registered on the AARTO website, you will be able to see all your infringements, that you can attend to those infringements as soon as possible. So at the end of the day, if you ignore these infringements, it will result into an enforcement order. And when you go and stand in the queue to license your vehicle, and when you get to the front of the queue, they're going to say, but you can't get a disc because you have an enforcement order. And then we have some very unhappy customers. So when you do want to renew your license, or you want to renew your vehicle license, do a check on the AARTO website before you go and stand in the queue or license your vehicle or driving license, just to make sure that your record is clean, that you don't stand in the queue for 5-6 hours and then you cannot be assisted. So we would like to encourage everybody to use the AARTO website as far as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Gert. Okay, various municipalities impose different infringement costs. How will this be handled? I think with the AARTO system, all the costs nationally are going to remain the same. The courtesy letter cost, that will all remain the same. But if you would like to just add on that, please.
Can I add, Lizelle?
Yes, you are welcome.
You're correct. So once we implement AARTO nationally, they will all use a standard charge sheet, which we call Schedule 3. So there will be, currently, if you go to Polokwane and Cape Town, they're charging differently for a seatbelt. But once AARTO is implemented nationally, they will be charging the same. And so everybody will be aligned to use our Schedule 3 to do charges. Sorry.
No, not a problem. Thank you, Ms. Mamabolo. I also think that it's not just the infringement costs that will then be the same. The whole representations, nominations, all of that will be then the same on a national level, which will in turn make the management of traffic fines for a company and for an individual so much more easier and manageable. Okay, then. Yes. The next question, I think you will also be able to answer, Venda, is that infringers are often under the impression that enforcement orders are not issued by day 96. If they're not issued by day 96, the fine is not valid. Can you just please explain and elaborate on that so that people don't think fines are invalid when they're in fact actually not invalid?
Yeah. Can I take that one, Lizelle?
Yes, you can.
Yes. Lizelle, we have a system here which talks about 32 days for each phase. 32 days for infringement notice, 32 days for courtesy letter, and another 32 days for an enforcement order. So if you look at this system, it's not simply adding that 32 days plus 32 days is 64, and then 64 plus 32 days is 96. No. The reality of the matter is you will have an infringement notice, maybe an AARTO 01 issued to you today, then 32 days, the first 32 days starts counting. Once that first 32 days has ended, the clock of counting the days stops. Then what will happen? A courtesy letter will be authorized by the RTIA. The clock is still stopped, and then that courtesy letter will electronically go to the system of SAPO for service to the infringer. The clock is still stopped again up until that document is served or presumed served. You will have a situation where we will say the courtesy letter will be served when the person has collected the courtesy letter from the post office, whereby that person will receive a notification via registered mail saying go and collect a courtesy letter, then the person collects it. But we have other circumstances where people, they ignore this notification, but Section 30 of the AARTO Act is saying that even if you ignore the notification to collect the document, it will be presumed served. So this process from maybe the clock is stopped at 32 days, and there's this process of serving the document now, it can take plus minus 40 days sometimes. And then once this document is presumed served, then the clock starts ticking again, which means it's not a clear mathematics where you just say 32 plus 32 is 64, then 64 plus 32 is 96. There is also some processes in between these days. for serving this document, which increase now the period. It's not, it does not end up being exactly 64 days or 96 days. The way of looking at this is better to say, it's better to say that 32 days after the infringement notice, a courtesy letter will be authorized. And then once that courtesy letter is served or presumed served, only then you start counting another 32 days. Because if you say you're going to add 32 days on top of the other, then it's not the reality of how the system works. And these 64 days and then 96 days, you won't find it on the AARTO Act. The AARTO Act will talk about the 32 days after the service of the preceding document. So that's how the system works. And when it comes to the enforcement order now, in terms of Section 20, there is no prescribed timeline. This 96 days that the colleague is asking about, it's not legislated. You won't find it on the AARTO Act, but the AARTO Act is just saying that after 32 days from issuing or from serving a courtesy letter, then an enforcement order can be issued and served. So if people just write not served, enforcement order not issued within 96 days from the infringement notice date, highly likely that those applications will be unsuccessful because that is not documented on the AARTO Act.
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much for that explanation. Thank you. Okay, the next question I think is more to do with the CPA, so I'll answer it. Do all municipalities offer discounts or fines, or is this only applicable to particular municipalities? Because currently with the CPA Act, I think it depends on municipality to municipalities, and it basically depends on the prosecutor that deals with those fines if he is going to provide you with a discount or not. So it is an application process that you would have to do currently with each municipality. So if you have a traffic fine in Durban, you would have to contact the Durban municipality where that fine was incurred, and you have to ask them if you can apply for a discount, and they will explain the process. With the CPA, all municipalities have different processes. So a process that you follow in Cape Town will be different to a process that you follow in Durban or the Eastern Cape or any other municipality. So all municipalities currently do have different processes as well as different forms. As soon AARTO currently, yes, they do offer discounts, and it's an automatic discount during the first 32 days. So once the whole national level or on a national level we move over to AARTO, then all fines will automatically be discounted during the infringement notice period, which is the first 32 days from when the fine is issued or presumed to be issued, if I can put it that way. Anything you would like to add, perhaps, Mrs. Mamabolo? Or
No, you've captured it correctly. It differs from municipality to municipality, so you've captured it well. So I don't think there's anything from my side to add.
Okay. I'm just going to move on to the next one. This one, I'm not sure if you will be able to clarify it, but pay fines indicated that there was a fine for a driver on the system. This was 1 year old when it appeared. After querying this, the fine was removed off the system, but it reappeared 2 months later. How will this be dealt with? I think this pay my fines or pay fines currently deals with not only, I'm not sure if they deal with AARTO fines, but they deal mostly with Criminal Procedure Act fines. And that is something that you would have to take up with them or the municipality currently that deals with that fine, or where that fine specifically was issued. I don't think that we will have problems like this with AARTO fines, but if somebody from the RTIA side can just clarify if that has happened before on the RTIA side and what the process will be then for any AARTO fines. I'm not sure if that has happened before.
Lizelle, let me just take that one.
Okay.
According to my knowledge, this has never happened in the AARTO system, but we would like maybe an example, maybe an infringement notice number to be sent to us, talking strictly to this particular case, then we can investigate. But as far as we are aware, issues like this, they don't happen in the AARTO environment. And you correctly put it that pay fines deals with traffic fines from different systems and municipalities, CPA, and also AARTO as well. So it possible can be a fine maybe from a criminal procedure environment. But if it's an AARTO one, we would like to look at it and then investigate and advise accordingly.
Thank you, Kwazi. Okay, how long does it take for fines to be loaded to the web so that one can view it there? Very often the fines do not appear online even after 30 days have elapsed. To implement AARTO, it is important that all supporting structures, postal system loading to the web, etc. all must be aligned. Otherwise, you have a lovely plan which fails in execution. Again, I want to, from my side, just say that I understand there's a lot of frustration currently with the CPA system where fines are not loaded, or where it's a handwritten fine and the driver does not give it to the company. I don't believe that those issues are currently a part of AARTO, and I think that those issues will be resolved once we move over nationally to AARTO. But if you can maybe just give us an indication, if a fine is received today, how long will it take to become available on the AARTO system online?
Okay, Lizelle, it depends what type of a fine is it, or what type of an infringement notice is it. If it's an infringement notice that is issued to you on the side of the road, the AARTO 01, we expect that one to be on the system within 10 days, in line with our procedures within the AARTO environment. But if it's a camera fine or a camera infringement, we expect that one to be loaded within 20 days. So those are the timelines. I know there are some ways of making sure that these are done timelessly, but sometimes those time frames are not met. But that does not mean the traffic infringement is invalid. But if a person maybe is complaining about such circumstances where there was late capturing or late uploading of the infringement notice, very important for that person to also explain how was he or she negatively affected by such late capture or uploading of that document. It's not something that it means that automatically it's invalid. There must be an explanation. How did it maybe affect the discount or the elective options or things like that? If maybe a person wants to challenge failure of following the procedures, must be documented on the representation form. How did it negatively affect the infringer? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kwazi. Okay, why can't the system also be used positively by the RTIA to sending reports of infringements and offences periodically to fleet owners or senior managers to be used in their driver training and management? I'm not sure who to direct this question to, so if any one of you can answer perhaps.
Lizelle, maybe let's give it to Mr. Van Eden.
Okay, Mr. Van Eden.
Okay, so if I read the question correctly, so we have drivers working for companies and they get infringements, and then the manager need to know about this driver that's committing these infringements. So on the NATIS or AARTO system, we don't know who your manager is or who you report to. So if we have a report of a driver, let's say it's Gert, he's got all these infringements, who do we send it to? The other issue that we need to take account of is the protection of personal information. Is whether is it acceptable that one sent let's say a track record or a report of infringements or offences to anyone else without the consent of that specific driver. So at the end of the day, the system does provide, if you look at the current CPA process, your company, when you apply for your job or when you get appointed, I think sometimes you need to give consent to your employer that they may draw a criminal record on your name via MIE or some other company. But that's a process that must be controlled must be managed very carefully, that we don't get into a situation where there's claims for damages against either the agency or the employer or whoever. So there are procedures in the Act provided for where an employer with the consent of the driver can ask for a report of that driver to see how they behave or how they what their record is. Or the alternative is that the employer can ask the drivers that they must get their reports and then submit it on a monthly basis to the employer to show that they have got clean records. The other issue about the demerit points on the costs, every time points are recorded, a document is sent to the driver to say these are your points. So it's not as if the driver will not know what the points are. So one should look at your employment contracts to say that if a driver has incurred any points or was notified, then it's a responsibility on the driver to then notify the employer of such situation, but not only for points, even if under CPA, Criminal Procedure Act, if your license is suspended or cancelled, there must be an obligation on the driver to notify the employer that my license has been cancelled, I'm not allowed to drive anymore. If that person drives and he's involved in an accident where other people are killed, then there can be serious claims against the employer. So it's not as if AARTO is bringing in all these new challenges. The challenges are already there under the Criminal Procedure Act. It will maybe just become more visible under the AARTO on the points. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Van Enen. Okay, next question. We have quite a lot of questions left. How will points be allocated to foreign drivers? I think Mr. Ngcobo did cover that in his section. I'm not sure if you want to just repeat that, perhaps, Mr. Ngcobo?
Yes, thanks, Lisa. Yes, I did cover this one when I was dealing with the question of SADC drivers. that even if the drivers are not from South Africa, when they are driving in South Africa and committing infringements, and those infringements, they carry points, they will be allocated to their record. Because even if it's a license from Mozambique or Namibia or wherever, we can introduce the details of that document on notice and the particulars of the individual that committed the infringement and capture the violations accordingly. So once those particulars of an infringement are captured on notice, even the points will be recorded as well. And then if the points of that particular foreign driver exceed 15 points, that foreign driver will not be allowed to drive in South Africa up until the points are back at 15. But unfortunately, the South African government does not have powers to cancel a Namibian license or to suspend it. But we do have powers to stop people who have exceeded the threshold that is legislated in South Africa from not driving, even with that license that is not suspended. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Okay, here the next question. An infringer goes to the bank, post office, or to any other pay point, for example, to pay a discounted traffic fine within the 32 days period, and find out that the traffic fines has not yet been loaded to the system. What then happens? I know that under the Criminal Procedure Act, this is quite a big concern for companies, where they would receive a handwritten fine and then go to pay that fine, and the fine will not be captured to the system. What will on the system? What will happen with AARTO if that does happen?
Yeah. Let me take that one, Lisa.
Okay.
Here you have a situation whereby this infringement has exceeded 32 days now, and the person is inconvenienced because he or she wanted to pay the discount amount, but he cannot pay it now because on time, because this was not captured timelessly. So what will happen here? There's an option to make a representation. Let's say when maybe this 32 days is exceeded and this infringement was captured after 32 days and you don't qualify for discount, you can dispute that infringement and say, no, I wanted to pay on time, but you guys, you uploaded this violation late, so please cancel it because now I don't qualify for my discount. But another situation is when you want to pay, let's say maybe you go to an issuing authority and it's still within 32 days and you want to pay, there's something that they call a fresh payment there. Even if it's not on the system, maybe if you go to JMPD offices or you go to TMPD offices and you want to pay their infringement notice there, if it's not captured, they capture same time and we can make a payment. But there's also this other option, like I said earlier, you can always challenge that fine if you feel that you are not given an opportunity to pay a discounted amount. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwazi. Okay, I think this question, I just want to move to a couple of questions that hasn't been covered during this session because we are running out of time. What does the RIA program consist of, and who will it be run by? Do you have more information on that, or is that still in discussion?
Can we give that one to Mr. Jube, Lisa?
Okay.
Yeah, and as I previously alluded to, in a presentation by Kwazi as well, that these programs may consist of a driver simulator test. It may consist of you going through a upskill course with regard to the road signs and road laws, or you may be subject to both of those categories. So it will depend on what offences you have committed and the reason why you have been suspended. And the programs will be run by our regulations, makes provision that we must appoint a service provider that will run these programs for us on a national basis. So as soon as we have done with that process with tenders and stuff, then we'll have more clarity on how the programs will be provided by the service provider on a national basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Nti. The next question, I'm not sure if there's somewhere in South Africa where camera offences is not issued at the moment, but when will camera offences be issued again? I'm not sure if it is offline somewhere.
So I think this, Lizelle, is related to currently JMPD is not issuing camera infringements because the contract with the service provider came to an end and they are still in the process of finalizing and bringing on board a new service provider. So that will depend on the finalization by the issuing authority with the new service provider on when are they going to start putting up cameras again. But currently there is that challenge that the JMPD's service providers contract ended. And also there was a period where Tshwane also their service provider contract ended and they could not issue camera infringements. Currently, Tshwane is just issuing at a very small scale because they are still also finalizing certain issues with their contract. So I think this is where the question is coming from.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Venda. Okay, how will points be? I'm going to make this the last question. I know we've received a lot of questions in chat. We will, over the next couple of days, contact all the registrants that have asked those questions, and we will answer them as best as we possibly can. I will also contact the panel if I need assistance with answering these questions. But the last question for today is, how will points be managed on vehicles that are sold?
Okay, Lizelle, the points, they belong to a person, basically. And a person can be a natural person, and a person can be a heuristic person. And we also have an operator there. So what will happen here, if I have a company with a fleet of 20 vehicles, for example, then I sell one of the vehicles that has accumulated 13 points. What will happen if I sell this vehicle to Lizelle? Lizelle will be able to register it without any points since the change of ownership has changed. Since the change of ownership has taken place. But what will happen to these points is that when I buy a new vehicle, they'll be allocated to this new vehicle because they still belong to the company. So selling the vehicle does not mean that you are transferring the demerit points as well. Those demerit points accumulated by that company will remain demerit points for that company. They can just move around from one vehicle to another within the company, but they cannot be transferred to the new owner. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwazi. Okay, everybody, I think I'm going to close off the session for today. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get to all the questions. We have got quite a few left. But as I said, we will follow up with via email with all the questions and send the answers through to all the registrants. We have recorded the session, so I will put the recording together and we will send you a link where you can watch a replay of this recording if you did miss a section or you had to leave the session as well. Thank you again to our panel from the RTIA. We really enjoyed all the information that you shared with us, and I am actually looking forward and hoping that AARTO is implemented on a national level, because I see the positive side in AARTO, and I believe that it is definitely going to make a difference. So thank you again to the RTIA for joining us for this session. If there's any more questions, you are more than welcome to contact me afterwards. If you have any questions to the RTIA, you're also welcome to contact me, and I will share that or get that information that you need from them. Mrs. Mamabolo, I said you raised your hand.
I was sleeping. It was not a raised hand.
Okay, just waving.
I was just
Okay,
sleeping.
not a problem. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much, Giselle.
Thank you,
very much.
Lizelle.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.